Welcome to another MBS Highway live webinar. I'm your host, Megan Anderson, here with Barry Habib and our very special guest, John Mauldin, who has been dedicated for over 30 years to helping keep people informed about financial risk. He's a visionary thinker, financial expert, and multiple New York Times best-selling author and publisher of the newsletter that all of you MBS Highway members receive as well, Thoughts from the Frontline. You've seen him on TV, you've heard him on radio. Welcome, John Mauldin.
Megan, that was a very, very gracious introduction. I just need to bottle that up and take it with me, and you can do it everywhere I go.
I would definitely be down for that.
Hey, John, it's really good to see you, my dear friend. It's been too long since we've gotten together, but I'm sure we'll fix that in the not too distant future.
I keep threatening to get to New York, which would mean I'd be in Europe. Well, you're most of the time now in Florida, so
yeah, a lot of time in Florida, but I'm up here too.
I need to maybe go to Florida, bounce, and then bounce to New York.
So. There you go. But John, we appreciate you taking the time with us. There's so many questions that people are asking. There's so much uncertainty out there right now, and as I've often said to you, when we chat, I love your perspective. I think you have a very unique way of breaking things down, looking at things, and explaining them remarkably well and making them understandable. In addition to that, John, I think everybody knows this here, but in case you don't, John is one of the most plugged in and well-connected and networked individuals with all the top names, the brightest minds out there. And John classifies as one of the brightest minds as well. So I'm excited to chat with you today, John, about quite a few things that are going on and just get your take. So let's start with something that's obviously caused a lot of disruption, but maybe we could just touch upon this. What are your thoughts on the current situation, and how does it potentially get resolved between Russia and Ukraine? Because that's causing supply chain disruptions and putting a little inflationary pressure out there.
We are, and we'll talk about the Strategic Investment Conference in a minute, but one of the things, as you well know, since you've been on at the conference, we do a briefing period with the speakers before the conference. So we're going through that now. And we've done a couple of our geopolitical speakers, and it's really sobering. I mean, former deputy commander of NATO, which is the highest command that a European can have, because the ultimate commander is always an American. But what he was telling us, I mean, this guy's plugged in, he's wired. I'll preview it a little bit here. Basically, he says this is going to last a lot longer than we think. And he's talking, this could be generational. Now, we would like to hope for the best and a quicker resolution, but the Russian forces have, in the north, just were completely beat. In the south, they're having which is really where they're focused, because they want to create that line from Russia and down into Crimea. And if they could get Odessa easily enough, they would. I don't think Odessa right this second is in danger of falling. The Russians have to move a lot of equipment to get into the east of Ukraine, and they have to go through what's known as exterior lines. And the Ukrainians have the interior lines, and a lot less, and it's friendly. So it's a lot less difficult for them. This is going to create disruptions. We're going to see sanctions just on top of sanctions when Europe, and it'll take, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years for them to wean themselves off of Russian gas and oil. In the same time, Russia is going to be having to build pipelines to China, because where they have the gas and the pipelines that goes to Europe, that's got to go another direction. And getting a pipeline to India it's not going to be easy. And I'm not griping about the Indians taking the oil. They've got to find oil. And it's a commodity. It's going to go somewhere, but it's going to go at a discount, and it's not going to be in hard currencies. So Russia's going to have some problems over the long term, and frankly, the longer it goes, the better the situation for Ukraine is. They randomly had about a dozen, mid-level officer level soldiers in the U.S. doing training. So they said, well, before we ship you back, we're going to teach you about this little thing called a striker, which is, a drone. And so they've confirmed today that they left with 100 strikers, but that means that's just the beginning. It's going to start flowing. And these are very serious drones. The levels that we're shipping to them now can take out manned patrols and manned vehicles. The next level can easily take out a tank. And they'll be getting some of the next levels, and that just makes it more difficult. Right now, the Ukrainians are using, basically infantry anti-tank weapons. They're just walking right up to them and getting close enough to be able to shoot. That's dangerous. When you can step back 20 miles with a drone, that's a different story. I mean, I saw one video on my screen today, and we'll get off Ukraine. I saw one video of 5 Russian helicopters. It looked late at night, late in the evening. There was still some sun, and there were, I don't know, 14, 15 Stingers going after them, but they took 4 out. I mean, they'd hit, nothing would happen, and then it hit and go boom, and there'd be misses. So, I mean, it wasn't a good day to be a helicopter pilot.
John,
and I'll finish this up. I just think this has the potential to drag on a lot longer. And frankly, all the atrocities we've seen, which means we're going to see more, is just going to anger the Ukrainians even more. It makes it very difficult to come to an emotional place where you can say, yeah, maybe I'll give up Donetsk and Mariupol, and we close down. It's going to be very, very difficult emotionally to do that.
So, John, if that does drag on for a while, does that keep some supply chain and inflationary pressure on us here in the U.S.?
Absolutely. I mean, because it's going to create energy prices. I mean, you and I talked about this offline. I'm starting for the first time in my life, even though I grew up in the oil patch. Literally grew up in the oil patch in West Texas. Christy Mitchell and Mitchell was drilling basically in my backyard. That was the old man Christie funded the Mitchell brothers, which became Mitchell Energy. I've never put a client into a oil fund. I mean, energy companies, yes, but not an oil fund. And I'm kind of the opinion of the people I listen to. I think oil is going to be high for a long time. I don't think we're going to see, 30 or 40 or $12 oil like Kathy Wood says. I think that's not in our future for a while, because it's going to take years for Russia to reposition its oil. I mean, pipelines take a long time to build. I just wish that we had a president that would allow us to build more pipelines in the US so that we could get more of our gas, so that we could ship it to Europe. That's neither here nor there, but we're going to see high energy prices. That's going to create, not having Ukraine as part of the food chain is going to be a problem for a while. That is, their summer wheat is not as important as their winter wheat, but it's still important. And if they can't get things to the place where they can at least plant winter wheat in the western part of Ukraine, that's going to be a massive hit. So, I mean, and that's world food supplies. Sunflower oil is a big deal. So all of these things add up, and it's not Ukraine, but are you paying attention to the bird flu crisis? Does that hit we've had to put down 23 million chickens in the last month here in the US. That's why your price of chicken, the prices of eggs are going up. And typically the bird flu season, when it comes in, comes from migrating birds, and we haven't seen the migrating geese and duck yet. So the East Coast, the chickens along there, they're about to get carpet bombed by geese and ducks, and we're going to lose a lot more chickens than we ever have, even worse than 2015. So more food inflation. It's just one after another.
So this food inflation, as well as oil inflation, the result for people listening to this call is how it impacts interest rates. And we know interest rates are going to be very sensitive, and they've gone up as inflation's gone up. So let's bring in the Fed now. So here comes the Fed, and we know that they're probably going to hike by 50 basis points after the last quarter point hike, and they're going to probably need to do that to bring the Fed funds rate up at least somewhere around 2, maybe up to 3%. What is the impact on the economy of seeing 200 or 300 basis points increase, along with the outline they gave us yesterday, which was about 95 billion in runoff from the balance sheet? Do you think it's inevitable that a recession is coming?
I actually think the runoff is more important than the interest rates.
It sure is.
I mean, if the economy can't handle 1%, God help us. I mean, the businesses are actually not that bad, other than the supply chain stuff. I mean, you listen to their calls, it's supply chain and employees. So, but most of the things that are in the inflation picture can't be affected by interest rates. So, but they pull the supply chain down. That's what Jesse Felder calls the volatility suppression lever that the Fed has. When they've been doing QE, that suppressed volatility. When they start pulling it back, it's going to have the opposite effect. I think we're going to see a lot more volatility. I think if you read the last minutes, if you listen to some of the speeches, I think this FOMC is prepared to watch stocks go down. They know that it sounds to me in their speeches that they really know they've got to do something about inflation. They don't want to be Arthur Burns. They don't want to be Miller. And they, for God's sake, they don't want to get to have a Volcker point in their life. So I think they feel they have to do something. They have to be seen to doing something. Congress is going to help them by not running massive stimulus bills and bringing that down. And when we get a Republican Congress House this fall, then that'll help the spending some, I think, that stimulates inflation. So we're going to see some demand destruction because of inflation, and that's recessions. I think at some point you get a recession. I'm on record as saying I think we're going to see a recession. I think third quarter, fourth quarter is a possibility. First quarter 2023 is very real. What's your time frame?
Well, as everybody listening knows, the latter half of last year, we had said end of 2022, early 23 is when we thought there was a recession, because our trend indicators were flashing that. As you know very well, John, You get oil spikes, that's contributory. You get inversions of the yield spread and the yield curve. That's something that is a pretty reliable indicator. We've kind of gotten those two things happen, but we're looking very closely at when we get to the bottom of the unemployment rate. And I'd have to think that we're somewhere close to that in an upturn, because that's a really reliable indicator. So we're right there with you. We think that that's possible.
And I would remind people, there was a time in the 80s and 90s. I mean, for those of us old enough to remember, Megan doesn't count. When we would have killed for a 5% or a 4.7% unemployment, let alone 3.6. So, I mean, we haven't seen this since the 60s. And that one little quarter in Trump's last year. I mean, this is an exceptionally low unemployment rate. And I feel the Fed, because they've got two mandates, inflation and unemployment, I don't think they feel like they're going to break their mandate if unemployment goes to 5%.
Yes. And John, you've done such a good job. And for everybody listening here, look, the reason we're trying to tie all these events together is because the situation in Russia, Ukraine will have a bearing on inflation. And if you don't know this, inflation is the main driver of interest rates. Inflation goes up, rates go up. If inflation can come down, you'll see interest rates come down. And that's what we're all interested in. The other things that are out there, oil prices. And that's the things that we're talking about here with John. And I just want, nobody's trying to get political here or anything like that. John is just telling it like it is from his lens. John's one of the most neutral people. He has given it to the right. He's given it to the left. If you read his newsletter, you know that. But John also is like an umpire. He calls him as he sees him. So if he thinks that the right is making a mistake, he'll call him out. If he thinks the left's, so this is not political with John. John is trying to give you an insight as to where this is. So,
and by the way, when I said I wish this administration would, they've gone to bad actors saying, please give us oil. When we're trying to damp down oil, I mean, that's going to be one of our panels. And the big companies, Pioneer, Harold Hamm and others, they're saying our shareholders want us to give them back money. We're increasing dividends, doing buybacks, and we're not drilling near as much. There is, and the big lenders, the big banks don't want to lend to the small, wildcat. And I don't want to call them wildcatters. You're not hardly wildcatting anymore when you've got a proven field and you got a well here and a well here, and you're going to drill between. That's not wildcatting. Okay, that's just proving up reserves. We need to fund these guys more, and because of the whole ESG movement, it's now politically incorrect for banks or private equity to get out there and fund these small guys. And to their credit, the oil companies said they got burned so bad in 2014, 2015, so bad when oil prices went back and oil companies were going bankrupt left and right. They've gotten real conservative right now, and because their shareholders have told them you better be conservative. So it's going to take a lot to get American oil supply up, world oil supply up. I mean,
so John,
and if oil at 120, 130, which is very possible, I'm not predicting it. I'm just saying, I look at people that I trust and they're going 120, 130, they don't think that's out of the realm of possibility until we see some demand destruction. If you have a global recession, which I think a US recession is going to lead to a global recession, then you'll see some demand destruction and the price will come down. What does it come down to? $70, $80? These guys are pulling oil and gas out of the of a piece of ground at $35 and less. So there's no incentive for those who can get access. There's no incentive for them to stop. So,
John, question for you here. So if we take a look historically during recessionary periods, you do see interest rates come down. During recessionary periods, the stock market tends not to like those recessions. So my question is this: if the Fed is, they're set on a course now, they're going to raise rates, they're going to allow the balance sheet runoff, so they're playing with two different levers at the same time.
At the same time,
which is, you have two different variables. I don't know that that's the best strategy. We saw that failed. I mean, they just look at 2018, right? We saw that these things kind of they don't do well. But I'm sorry, 2016. We know that they don't do well. But John, can the Fed really succeed in slowing demand, doing demand destruction enough to bring down inflation with these outside forces that they may not be able to control? You just pointed out oil, you just pointed out food. Can they slow demand enough? And in their efforts to do so, bring us into recession. Will the Fed be successful? And will the result of that success, if they have it or not, cause so much pain that we have a really tough time in the stock market?
I think they will be successful in creating a recession. Yes. I think they will be successful in bringing the stock market back down. A lot of the stock market already is down, depending on which part you're looking at. One of the things, if you go back into the 70s and you look, what stocks did well in the 70s and what stocks did poorly. Stocks that had very low P to E ratios significantly outperformed the market. I mean, enough to carry you through. Stocks with high P to E ratios, or growth or whatever, they didn't do so well. So for those that feel like they've got to be in the stock market, I would be looking at high and growing dividend players, low P to E, oil, large oil producers that are growing their dividends now, not just paying a dividend, but every quarter they grow their dividend.
So these are very valuable, obviously, for our personal portfolios. But so you think the Fed will be successful in bringing us to a recession, slowing things down, but will that bring inflation down? And that's the important question for those listening to this.
Recessions are by definition deflationary.
Right.
And so, yes, I just saw a question pop up on the screen here. I didn't realize I could see them, but they're there. Somebody asked, will there be stagflation? And yes, that's my call. There's going to be stagflation. And until we get to a recession and inflation begins to come down, that's going to continue to be the same. So we're going to see stagnant growth, low growth, and higher inflation. But let me turn the tables on you, because you're the guru of interest rates, and mortgage rates have certainly shown dear God, what happened to us? 5%, 3%. We barely knew you. So where are we going on interest rates, Barry?
If you go by history, as you know, if the Fed is successful in slowing things down, and if we go into a recession, and as you said, by definition, that's deflationary, we see a lot of room for mortgage rates to drop back down. The Russia-Ukraine situation was an outside black swan that we didn't see. That we feel has probably attributed maybe 1% to where rates would be. And now the Fed, if they're not too aggressive, see, here's the way we figure it out. It's like, if the Fed's going to take $35 billion that they work themselves up between, May, June, and July of runoff in the mortgage-backed security market, you take last year's 3.9 trillion in 2021, you take this year's 2.6 trillion. Well, that's 1.3 trillion less supply coming to the market anyway. Runoff around 1.3 trillion between the money that they are no longer buying, the 40 billion a month, plus the roughly 50 to 70 billion dollars a month in additional reinvestments. It kind of balances itself out if they don't get above that $35 billion a month in runoff. If they do that, then we shouldn't be as affected by the runoff. And then if the hikes are successful and inflation comes down, and that's why I was asking you about the Russia, Ukraine, and the oil situation, because the Fed can do this, but they're somewhat handcuffed in how much they can affect those areas of inflation.
Well, I mean, how much can the Fed hiking affect housing prices, Barry?
Well, here's the thing. If that's the case, first of all, right, if that's the case, then we see, just like similar recessionary periods, under Volcker, he raises the Fed funds rate 9%, mortgage rates come down 6%. Greenspan raises rates 1.75%, mortgage rates come down 3%, because in those two cases, inflation got slayed and mortgage rates come down.
And housing prices.
Well, actually, housing prices, believe it or not, during the recessions that followed, actually went up, and they actually continued to go up. We could pull up a chart. I know it's very counterintuitive, but home prices did well, probably because interest rates came down so much, right? So if the same thing happens, it will help home prices. So here's our bottom line take on housing. It's red hot right now. It's not going to continue this hot. We hope it doesn't continue this hot. But what we clearly see is that it's going to be very difficult for home prices to decline because of the just very simple demand and supply equation. Too many households being formed, not enough construction and building going on. We continue to undersupply the housing market. It doesn't even count the 100,000 homes a year that got to be replaced anyway, that you need to overbuild by just to keep equilibrium. So we don't see there being a housing bubble. We see a slowdown, and that's a welcome slowdown, because what's going to happen, John, is that individuals who now at 5 or 5.25, or even maybe 5.5%, if inflation keeps rising and we don't do something about it with the runoff too, even if you see that out there, what that will do is take people on the margin and they won't purchase a home. So you'll get less bids over ask, less price appreciation in the teens, and more modest price appreciation, because what's your alternative? You're going to live with mom and dad, you're going to rent, which is going up 17% a year. There's just not enough supply, and there's still enough demand to continue to see home prices going up, even with rates where they are right now.
I will say that I remember paying 12% for a mortgage and then deciding renting was better after I sold. And then the next mortgage I got was like 6 or 7, and then sold that in the late 90s, and then rented it for 16 years till I bought a house in a condo in Dallas for the rates. My final rate was 2 3/8. So I mean, and then I come to Puerto Rico and it's, they're going to charge me 6%. So that's just,
yeah. So John,
so people can they just figure out what they can pay and at what rates, and then they go figure out how much house they can buy.
Yeah. So John, Megan, always being super sharp, as we were talking about it, you could see the last 9 recessions, 8 of 9 home values actually went up, and then went up sharply 8 of 9. The one anomaly was the housing bubble, where it wasn't the recession that caused the bubble. It was the bubble that caused the recession, because you could see it peaking and turning prior to the recession. And John, that was simply because nothing down, 580 FICO, no income, no asset, no job. Let's give you 5 properties for each individual. It's like, there were excesses, and the mortgage environment, as anybody in this call will tell you, is dramatically different than before. I mean, the loans that are being done now are very high quality loans that are performing really well. So thank you for that, Megan. That was well executed and well timed to show that, yeah, home values really tend to do well. Look, every time may have its own black swan events, but John, will the Fed have the fortitude to stay the course? Let's say the Fed takes the Fed funds rate 50 in May, 50 in June, and then in August another 50, and the stock market all of a sudden goes into to a tailspin. Will the Fed, as they've shown us in the past, get cold feet and back off? Or if they see real clear recession signs, because now we had a brief inversion in the yield curve, they start pumping up the lower end 150 bips from here, and now you're going to get some real inversionary trends in the yield spread. So will we see the Fed back off and get cold feet and get afraid as the economy starts to really clearly show signs of recession? Or will the Fed have the fortitude to be Paul Volckerish and stay the course?
You tell me what inflation is going to be. If inflation's down under 4, they start backing off. If inflation's still in the 5 range, I don't think they can. They have got to see a clear present trend in inflation going down, and they've got to see supply chains getting fixed. They've got to see what happens is in things like this, businesses, entrepreneurs everywhere tend to look at, here's my situation. What can I do to improve my situation? Where can I get supply? How can I create a new supply chain? That's just what you do. And so the normal process of American business is fixing the problem. And if they fix the problem, then they fix the supply chain issues. And so a lot of that supply chain driven issue will go away. Now, you're still going to have inflation. You're still going to have a wage price spiral. I mean, I'm afraid that inflation has gotten anchored in our kind of our national psyche. And that means workers have the upper hand now. There's twice as many jobs as there are people looking for, as there are jobs, people, or as there are people looking for jobs. COVID has given a lot of people to rethink who am I, what am I doing, what's my purpose in life questions. And some of them said, my purpose in life is not working at that factory or not working at this, but my purpose in life is something they've gone off and done. Or we're restructuring my house. I can do a little work from home. My husband can bring the money in, or my wife can bring the money in. And we're going to be a 1.5 income family. Goldman Sachs saying that we're going to pay you $130,000 a year to come into their office in uptown, downtown, may not look as good as being able to get $90,000 a year and live anywhere you want to. I mean, when you've got to $130,000 a year, you're not really living in anything that looks comfortable in Manhattan. And so you're commuting in, you've got an hour commute at a minimum, and then you're going home late at night. That $130,000 to work in the office doesn't look that good anymore. We are completely changing the way people are looking at work.
You're right. And John, to address the affordability situation that we talked about, and I know that I'm seeing some stuff in the chat window. So we've got something that we do talk about here. I'm just going to share very quickly. Last year, if you were taking out a $400,000 mortgage and the rate were 3 3/8, this is what your normal monthly payment would be. And the averages, according to Fannie and Freddie, for just principal interest, you'd be making about that much in income. And then as you were to take a look at the next year's income. Oh, let me just do something here. I'm sorry, guys. I'm going to have to, it's not working for me. So I'm going to come back to that in just a minute. So just continue, John. Apologize for that. I'll stop sharing. And
I'm actually want to see that chart when you get it fixed.
Yeah, I'm gonna get that fixed.
You were leading me on there, and
I know, and I will. I'll get that fixed for you in just a minute. But continue, John. We want to ask you with regards to the stock market and its current state. Do you think that it is overly valued, highly valued, or fairly valued? Where do you think the stock market resides right now?
I think portions of the stock market are very overvalued. I think portions of it are fairly valued. I think some are beginning to see undervalued. I think that if we see a bear market, which I think we will, receding tide is going to take a lot of boats down. We're going to see the mother of all buying opportunities. We're going to see lots of businesses, lots of commercial real estate, lots of things that are going to be real buying opportunities, generational buying opportunities. So I know that when we say recession and all these things, we start getting scary. Well, yes, but it's a buying opportunity as well. And cash here is an option. It's an option on being able to buy something cheaply in the future. So, I'm not really distressed about the potential of a bear market. Honestly, the worse tech stocks get beaten up, the more they get beaten up, the more excited I get, because there's going to be some great opportunities in tech. I like a lot of stocks in tech. I really do. But they've been, their price just went too high for too much. Now they're getting beaten down. The momentum's the other way. And there's going to be a point in time when I'm going to say, that technology I want. Palantir back to where it was a few, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Good grief. How low can Palantir go? I don't know. But at some point, I'm going to be a buyer. I don't want to buy indexes. I like rifle shots. So,
John.
Yes, sir.
Let me get my camera back here. I'm sorry, John. It's not that one, Megan. I know you're trying to help me out here. It's not that one. But my PowerPoint decided to lock up on me here. It's just locked up my mouse and camera. But let me see if I can get the camera back here. So there we go. So John, what do you expect in the coming year for the overall economy? Do you think that we get into this recession, and do you think that it's a short-lived recession? Is it going to be a shallow recession? How do you view the recessionary period? Is this something that we say, okay, look, don't be too scared because it might be 6 months long and it might be relatively shallow, or is this a recession that's going to be very scary?
I don't think this is going to be 2008, 2000. I don't think it's that deep. I don't think this is 1982. It's going to be more like, 94, 2001, 6 months. There's not that much slack in the economy. We'll see some. We're going to see some repositioning. So, but if you go into it with adequate cash and reserves and not being too aggressive, getting ready to get aggressive at the end of it, that'll be we're not going to get a buying opportunity like March 23rd, 2009, where it's just everything is just blown out and you see 666 on the S&P. We're not going to get anything like that, but we're going to get some good opportunities.
A question for you, John. In your newsletters, you always talk about the Great Reset. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that is and when you see that happening?
Well, it's not the Davos crowd. I don't want to say they barred the term, but I certainly should have put a patent or a copyright on the concept. But what I'm talking about is we continue to run deficits. I think by the middle of the end of this decade, we're going to be at 50 trillion of U.S. government debt, especially when you include local and state. And that just becomes too much of a burden if we've got interest rates back up to 2 to 3. So that if we're sitting there, the rest of the country is indebted. We've got, we're going to have to figure out how to, an economist uses the word rationalize. We're going to have to figure out how to rationalize that debt. Japan got to that spot and they said, we're just going to monetize it. And, Barry, you'll remember, because it was my best call and my worst call, simultaneously in the same letter, I said, Japanese bank is going to monetize their debt. And when they monetize their debt, every other time in history that a central bank has done that, their currency's gone down. So the yen is going to 200. And they did monetize their debt and the damn yen got stronger. And, it would have been one thing for me to make a bad call and say, oh, I made a bad call, sorry. It's another thing for me to take a significant chunk of money and put it in 10-year yen options that hasn't even approached my strike price yet. So I think I've got 2 or 3 years left, and that part's been written off.
Well, John, a couple of quick things here. So just because I'm seeing some of the comments there. So I think people want to understand rates. So back in September, I was at a conference and I thought that the end of this year, we'd see lower rates back towards the 3% range. That's, I did say that in September. Obviously, we did not have Ukraine, Russia on the radar, which is pushing oil prices and inflation higher, making it much more persistent. So, we don't see that type of a situation, at least that quickly. However, we get the recession that we're talking about. We get inflation to come down. Yeah, we think rates can come back down. That's why I was asking John the question, will the Fed have the resolve? And I think, John, you said kind of 5% or so is a line in the sand, that if they can get rates, if they get inflation under 5%, we get there. Another thing is, I also want to show you something here that I finally got my PowerPoint to cooperate. This is where we left off. This is last year's a $400,000 home with a 3 3/8 mortgage. Here's your payment. This is what your income would have been, a dual earning household, $4,500 apiece. So this year is 18% appreciation on the home. You've got to borrow 18% more. So that's 472,000 instead of 400 at today's rates. Now, maybe it's slightly higher than this right now, but I think you get the picture. Your payment, let's call it $700 a month more. And that's a big headline. People are worried about that from affordability. But John, as you know, the private sector income went up, according to the BLS, 10.5% from last year. So that means you're making $945 a month more. Now, this is an oversimplification. Other things, it's costing you more to fill up your car at the pump. We get that. It's costing you more at the grocery store. We get that too. But what we need to do is,
and your power bill and your utility bill,
100%,
and your
But what we're trying to say, John, is that yes, this is an oversimplification because there are other things that have to be considered. But what we're saying here is it's not as dramatic as it might look on the surface, because you have to at least contemplate that incomes have risen and you don't use all of your income for your mortgage payment. Yes, we know that there's other things that come into play, but it mitigates the headline that appears so negative. Yes, it's a bit more strenuous to do so, and that's why we're thinking that appreciation levels.
And maybe you don't buy a $400,000 house, maybe you buy a $350,000 house. That's just.
Or you go out to dinner maybe once less a month, or you buy one less pair of dancing shoes or whatever. You know what I'm saying? There are ways to cut back.
There are. I would just tell you, when you were down in Puerto Rico, we went to one of the restaurants in Dorado, and we had that fabulous Dover sole.
Yes.
And its price went up almost 70% between a month ago and today. So I don't know what.
So that means the next time we go
to the Dover sole shortage, but
well, I think that what it's telling us, John, is that the next time I'm there, you're buying. That's what it means, right?
Oh no, the next time I'm there, I can't afford to live here anymore. You have to buy.
Okay, got it. You got it. Anytime I get to have dinner with you, it would be my honor to buy, brother. So
any other questions from the audience I need to address?
Yeah, I'm skimming them, and Megan's usually really good at being able to kind of see where we'd be. Look, John, here's a really scary one, and this is a really sobering one. Is God forbid, I don't think anybody likes to talk about this, but this situation between Russia and Ukraine, and what if it gets really ugly, John? What if there's chemical or nuclear? What if that happens? What if that line's crossed?
That has been the top subject of a couple of the people that I've had the conversations with, and unfortunately, they don't dismiss it. They think this guy's crazy enough. NATO at that point, they've got a red line. They've got to do something. I don't know what. I don't know. But so I would ask them, what is something? And they said, we don't know. Mm-hmm. So, we're going to see it when you get there. By the way, Megan, you asked me about the Great Reset. What I'm saying is, when we get to that place where we have to decide how are we going to deal with the debt? Do we monetize it? Do we just poof it? What do we do with it? It's going to depend on who's in charge. The 2028 election may be one of the most important elections of our time, because that's going to say, are we going to get people that just say, let's print and then we'll see real inflation, or people that say, let's tighten our belt? But in any event, we're going to have to raise taxes. I think we'll have to have a VAT. That's the only way that you can get enough taxes. You cannot raise taxes on the rich, whoever they are. I mean, it ends up, to get enough, the rich will be people who make over $40,000 a year. And it's a significant increase, and you just can't do that. We're going to have to go to a VAT and still probably raise taxes. So we've got to balance that budget. That's one way to do it. Monetize it is another, and then you get caught with the tax of inflation. So it's going to be a very volatile period. It's Neil Howe's, the fourth turning. George Friedman talks about the storm before the calm. There's all these generational, geopolitical and generational cycles coming together at the end of this decade. And one of the things that always happens in a fourth turning is you get war. And I've been asking Neil for a long time, where's the war going to come from? Well, now we know. It's going to be disruptive. On the other hand, technology is going to be booming. We're going to be living longer than you could possibly imagine. It's hard for us to dream. I wrote about 2 weeks ago a new drug that's coming onto the market. We're going to see research papers here in another few weeks on it that are going to be just staggering. Rheumatoid arthritis medicines are going to be dropping by 50, 60, 70% here in the next few months. I mean, next few years as new drugs come on that have less side effects. I mean, the world's going to get better. Humanity's going to be in a better place. So I'm not bearish at all about the human experiment. I'm kind of bearish about governments and central banks. That's what happens when we start meddling in the markets.
So John, you touched upon this is important to all of us is longevity, right? So, one of the speakers that you had at your conference, who's great, he's a friend of yours. I just spent some time with him. Actually, we both spoke at Tony Robbins' Platinum event, Peter Diamandis, and he's amazing. And also dear friend of both of ours, who we both love, and also of MBS Highways, is Mike Roizen, who's very big on longevity. And I know that you've got, Pat Cox, and you've got so many contacts. You're on the cutting edge always of information on longevity. And what is I know you mentioned the drug coming on the market. What is the next best thing, or what is something everybody could be doing here from a longevity standpoint? I know you're always on the cutting edge of this, John. It's always interesting to hear you talk about this.
There will be a drug on the market, I believe, within 2 years, maybe sooner. It's already going. It's in its end result of phase 2 on what's called sarcopenia, which is losing muscle. As you get older, you lose your muscle is density abilities. And this drug is showing amazing results on sarcopenia because it's an anti-inflammation drug. Okay, there are other technologies, plasma replacement, things that are coming online that'll be available. They're available today, but they're going to be.
And by the way, you mentioned. I just want to take them one at a time because this is really important. So you mentioned the plasma replacement. So that would be the plasmapheresis, John. Is that where you get rid of the senolytic or the zombie cells by doing that? Yeah. So
absolutely. And so both of those, there's those and some other things are what I call the fountain of middle age. Okay, they're not age reversal, but they're the fountain of middle age. And right now, to me, middle age sounds pretty damn good. It's 72. So, I mean, it's Ray Kurzweil's line that you have to live long enough to live forever. I do believe that there are some significant players, backed by billionaires that don't worry about the money. Google's Calico, Bezos just launched one, which you would go, okay, except you have to look at who he hired and you go, damn, that's good. Sinclair, there's some others. And they're all going down the same path that Mike West has forged for them. So I think that end of the decade, you're going to see people starting to do human trials. It won't be done in the US, it'll be done somewhere else because we're too backward to see aging as a disease, but it'll get done. And, you know, your goal is to get to middle age and then to get there. Let's do SIC and then close this up.
Yeah, you got it, John. You got it. And by the way, some of the things that you turned me on to through Mike West, who I remember we had dinner with him. He was like the pioneer in this, and also through Royce and Diamantis. So you got me on the Niagen years ago, metformin, and those are big helps. But the plasmapheresis I haven't done yet, but I'm really seriously looking into it because those senolytic or zombie cells that use up resources, that causes aging. So we got to get rid of those too. So I'm on it.
We're gonna have to do it in the form of a clinical trial. I don't know how we're going to do it. If one of your readers has an extra $10 million sitting around, we can launch.
Let's talk about SIC, because you're going to probably cover some of these topics in SIC too.
We're going to be talking a lot of things at the SIC. We've got 40 speakers and more. We're adding, probably going to have 45, 50. Starts May 2nd to be the 2nd, 4th, 6th, 9th, and 11th. We'll start like 10:30 Eastern every morning and go for 5 or 6 hours. There'll be breaks in between. So, and then, you know, it's every other day. You'll be able to watch the videos, pick them up anytime you want to. There'll be, somebody said, Matt, you said SIC rocks. I like you. But there's transcripts that you can read at your leisure. And, you know, you can do it as a podcast. So it's a very user-friendly face. We've got NATO Deputy Commander Richard Sharif. A little scary. He doesn't pull punches. Of course, we've got George Friedman. We've got just a host of market experts coming on. We're going to have Thomas Honig, who was a Kansas City Fed who voted against all the QEs. Bill White, who was the Bank of International Settlements chief economist, and he's my favorite central banker, who's been arguing that the central banks have been much too loose. Felix Zuloff again, Mark Yusko, Grant Williams. I mean, it's Peter Bukvar, Bianco. We've got
and Barry Habib.
Oh yeah. Barry Habib is going to be featured. Thank you, Megan. I'm running down through my names. I don't have my list in front of me. Liz Ann Summers, David Rosenberg. I mean, Lacey Hunt. It's just a powerful Danielle DiMartino. It's just a powerful group of people, and a lot of people that you know of. I mean, Ron Barron is going to be there. So I mean, it's names that you know. Joe Lonsdale, Neil Ferguson.
I've always learned
there's going to be
so
names
much.
that you're going to.
I've always learned so much from SIC,
there
and
are.
I want you guys to know, sorry to cut you off. I just want you guys to know I did put more information for you guys in the chat box. Click that link, make sure that you guys get signed up for this.
Yeah, I have to tell you, John, it's my favorite conference. You know, I've been honored. This will actually be, believe it or not, John, it's the 6th time that you've allowed me to present at your conference, which I'm really honored to be.
Well, that's 10 times too few. So
thanks, John. But no, it is such a prestigious conference to speak at. And it's the only conference that I make sure I watch every single session. And I know that all of us here at MBSI, we pretty much watch every single session. And then we don't just watch it, we talk about a lot of the different sessions and speakers. It's really, really good.
You're going to see speakers this year that you've never seen. They're just, we've really done some really heavy duty research on, say, what questions do we want to ask? Who's the expert? And so we're bringing experts. And so for those of us who are new to the SIC, it's a webinar. You're going to hear 40 speakers in 5 days, 50 speakers in 5 days. I mean, we have a panel with some of the most powerful geopolitical and forecasting groups, names that you have heard, but I guarantee you when they pick up the phone, the National Security Council calls them back, Treasury calls them back, the Bundesbank calls them bank. I mean, these are wired in.
Yeah,
people.
and John, let me
And
just
getting that level of connectivity is just powerful.
yeah, no, it's unmatched. It is the conference for if you want to get economic education. It is virtual. And just so you know, when you get your pass, if you watched it live, great. If you're working, you can't watch it live. You can play the recording of it later on. So you don't have to, say, I got to take the day off. Well, I usually watch them in the evenings when I'm home. I kind of watch the sessions in the evenings, and then he puts a day in between. So you got speakers, then there's a day with there's nothing, speakers, a day. And the reason for that is so that if you can't watch it live, you can watch it that evening, sometime the next day, the next evening. So this way you can get caught up. It is extraordinarily thought-provoking. It is, I think it's a must for everyone. So just my 2 cents. We're big advocates, not just because John's allowed me to speak and because I love John, he's family to me, but I really do. John, and I'm just going to tell everybody this. So I consider myself to be a pretty good writer, and I always tell John, I said, man, John, you are the best writer ever. If you're not getting thoughts from the front line, which you can get right on MBS Highway to make it easier, you can subscribe to it directly.
It's free.
It's free. It is wonderful. It is, and it's beautifully written by John. I read the way he writes and I'm like, wow, I wish I would have said it like that. It's just like, what a beautiful way. I really stopped because I appreciate good writing, John. I don't know how many times I've called you or texted you just saying, man, it is just, I admire the way you write and teach all of us. And folks, everybody who's everybody in the financial world, the smartest minds, all of them, they're all reading John. Every single expert that you see on TV, every single one of you will tell you that they read John's material.
Thank you. And Brian, you asked, you always thought I had a writer? Yes, I do it myself. Come on. I've got my name on it. I've been doing this for as Thoughts from the Frontline for 23 years. I was writing long before then. So yes, I crank out words. So thank you. I've got to go to.
We love you, John, and all of our subscribers too. We love you guys too. So thank you for listening, and we try to give you just some knowledge as to what is happening out there from the best resources. And John, we thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Megan.
Everyone.
Next time. Okay. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye-bye.